Hi, Malt Mates. This is the Whiskey Bothy. You're probably interested in whiskey, therefore you are at the right place at the right time to discover a little bit more about Scotch whisky from my extras, and it's 1,110 extras. One of 1,812 videos on this channel. My goodness, it's taken me a long time to do it, but I'm getting there and I'm not finished yet. And one of the things I really enjoy about the whiskey journey is that even after all these decades, and I mean I've been drinking whiskey more or less regularly since the mid-1980s, right? Which is 40 years, okie dokie, because I started drinking whiskey when I bought my first flat in Glasgow in a wee borough down by the River Clyde called Partick, known as Partick. Very historic area. And I loved that place. And I loved it at that moment in time because people still had coal fires because they didn't have central heating. And it was one of these old-fashioned parts of Glasgow which was mainly blue-collar working people who did an honest day's job and they were happy and content within their community. And there was a lot of pubs. There still are a lot of pubs in Partick. And I used to kind of just go down to the bottom of the road where I lived, which was in Gardiner Street, and I'd go across the road to the pub. And it's what's called staggerology, right? The technique is, which is the best nearest pub, which is not going to be problematic with football colours and fist fights. Got to consider these things. And which is going to give you a lovely ambience, an enjoyable evening, and you don't actually have to travel too far. Therefore, you're not relying on buses, taxis, and other drunk people getting in your way. So I ended up at a little pub called the Smiddy. Really enjoyed it. There was also the one round the corner, which a very small pub, tiny wee place in a place called Fortrose Street, and I forget the name of it, but I'll remember it as soon as I've recorded this video. And already you can see I'm getting nostalgic about it, because the thing about whiskey is smell and taste is never forgotten. Memories become hazy with the passage of time, but when you taste something that you tasted decades ago, bang, you're right back there. It's almost instantaneous, the taste, the smell of nostalgia. And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing, because we lose track of the transition of time and we get caught up in the moment and all the white noise, the buzz, the of all the stuff that is being fired at us. And nothing helps you deal with it better than taking yourself into a silent place with no mobile devices, no monitors, no screens, no squawking kids and no squawking adults either. And what you do, either on your own or in good reliable company, you pour a wee dram and you just slow everything down. And it's wonderful. See, the thing is, we're in an age now where the big brands, they want us to consume faster. They want us to pick up the pace. So what they do is they advertise the party mix. Everybody's out, everybody's having fun, everybody's jolly, all adults and all together, and there's no issues, no feuds, no nothing. And so we're drinking. And drink faster, drink lighter, and don't bother so much about the taste. Alright? Because we're conditioned with supermarkets now, with the dominance of corporate blandification, right? That flavour's not so important. Just consume the product, and marketing will fill in the gaps. It's called suggestibility, and we're all vulnerable to it. But one of the things about Scotch whisky is that it's easy to walk away from from it. And one reason is because whisky advertising, particularly at this moment in time, is a very blunt instrument. It's not clever, it's not witty, it's not particularly fun. Whisky advertising is as bland as increasingly the single malts or blended whiskies that they are in fact advertising. So we have this engineering down of the brands. So when we tasted them a few years ago, when they were more handmade, in more active casks, they had a little edge to them, a little more spice, a little more energy, a little more zip, a little more substance. But now when we buy them, you see all the brands, they start to look the same. And it's what's called brand blandification. That's what it is. Because the big brands try to copy each other. And they're so insincere about it. Because the way they then deliver it is to chill filter it heavy and reduce it to as low a strength they can to actually deliver the basic product experience. And even better, they want us to consume the whisky with ice in it. And do you know why, malt mates? So we don't bother to stop and actually taste the whisky itself. But it's the taste that has made whisky's reputation in the first place. Particularly with the classic blended whiskies like White Horse, White and Mackay, in the old days when it was a proper sherry monster. And Red Hackle, that was a brand once. I remember that brand when I was a kid. Back in the 1960s. How time flies. Time is not constant. Moving on. And it was the blended whiskies that made Scotch whisky's reputation, because it made Scotch whisky cheaper and more available and more flavour balanced. And a few folk wanted malts, but not that many. Only the true connoisseurs, the searchers, the adventurers were after the malts. There wasn't many malts out there. There was Glenfiddich. They certainly pioneered the modern invention of the single malt and did a damn good job of it. Macallan, of course, Talisker, Rosebank. These aspirational malts from the good old days when they were all of better quality. Talisker, Lagavulin another good example. All these brands you can still get. But the thing is, when you sit round the table with your wee whisky circle and you compare today's bottlings with the bottlings bought at auction from 20, 30 years ago, you will see a distinct difference. And that blandification is partly to do, it's most substantially to do, with cask policies. The more industrial preparation of casks and the more methodical industrial use of casks for pre-blending single malts prior to bottling, so as to give you that balanced and at times overbalanced and slightly antiseptic pasteurised experience. I mean, you don't know what milk tastes like until you taste milk on a farm straight out the cow and compare it to your pasteurised milk from a supermarket, where you have the perfect example of blandified brands, so that the consumer isn't offended, isn't troubled, isn't distracted by flavour, because they're focusing on the label. They're focusing on the subliminal and obvious messages of the brands. This is something as whisky drinkers in this day and age, as we seek to remove ourselves from conformity and from blandification, we look further and deeper into the whisky world for the brands that are out there that are usually from smaller companies. They're less easily available. They're harder to find, but when you do, you discover it's well worth the challenge of looking out for them. You find it from the new distilleries which regularly bottle their whisky at a minimum of 46%, properly unchill filtered, not pretendy unchill filtered. I'm talking properly unchill filtered and bottled at natural colour. So you can see that the colour in the bottle and in the glass is actually 100% from residual previous content and the wood itself. This is important. It's messages, authentic, non-marketing messages, honest integrity messaging, and you have it beautifully delivered by the independent bottlers as well. Independent bottlers are hugely important to Scotch whisky. They're far more prominent in Scotch whisky than any other whisky in any other country in the world. We do see them now in Irish whisky, but you simply do not see enough independent bottlings of American bourbon because the bourbon makers have never had the vision to see the advantage of it. We have a classic example here. A very successful delivering independent bottler, Signatory Vintage. They also own a distillery, Edradour Distillery. Substantial distillery, very old school. Does very good at putting flavour into the malt. And this has been a perfect malt actually to deliver my little monologue here because it's Balmenach. I've never reviewed Balmenach ever before on this channel because it's few and far between. But it's not just Signatory that bottle it. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottle it. So if you're a Scotch Malt Whisky Society member, you're going to have access to these real rarities, obscurities, hard to findies, single malts. And it's just going to add another bright, beautiful little splash of paint onto the canvas of your whisky experience. And this is one reason why whisky never gets boring. Sometimes we get a bit jaded, which is natural. We've got to give our palate a rest, but there comes a point that you just pour another glass and think, you know, my life is so much better for this. I'm not drinking a lot. I'm not drinking for quantity. I'm keeping it less for quality. And therefore, as we come into 2026, as the Scotch whisky industry adapts, adjusts, delivers and survives, we're going to see more of these bottlings reaching further and further away from Scotland into markets around the world that have previously only had independent bottlings as a occasional novelty. We're going to see them appear. They'll be exciting, interesting, singular, challenging at times, but ultimately very, very rewarding for those who have the patience to know how to drink whisky properly. And that, primarily, is using the right glass with clean, fresh water and just giving the dram time. Because as much as we make time for the drams, malt mates, we're also making time for ourselves. Uninterrupted, undisturbed, untroubled by the increasingly absurd nature of modern media, pressurization, and the chemical castration of the entire humanoid collective, which is taking place right now. Anyway, having said that, philosophy is a wonderful companion with Scotch whisky. So here's my philosophical message to you to wind things up in this particularly spicy little video. Take your time, do your research, don't rush in, and be aware of the true value of the experience. Do not overpay for whiskies that under-deliver. Pay a fair price for a fair delivery of an authentic and probably quite amazing experience. I wish you well, and I'll see you soon. for my whiskey for the year 2026. Put on your seatbelts, mates. That's going to be a bumpy year.